Victory Chen had 3 rules. Never burn garlic, never date neighbors, and never fall for a man who thinks lasagna is a one-pan recipe. Then Michael Rivera knocked on her door holding a charred casserole and a crooked smile. And suddenly, every rule started to crumble like overbaked crust. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The scent of scorched garlic hit Victory Chen like a punch the moment she opened her apartment window. It clawed through the warm evening air, turning what should have been a relaxing Friday night into a culinary crime scene. She wrinkled her nose, scanned the courtyard below, and zeroed in on the only possible suspect. The glowing window across from hers, where tendrils of smoke curled lazily into the dusky sky. Of course, apartment 3B, her new neighbor. Victory had seen him once, twice maybe, since she'd moved in a month ago. Broad-shouldered, sun-browned, always in a hurry. He was the kind of man who whistled off-key while sorting mail and played his records loud enough to rattle her measuring spoons. She hadn't caught his name, but she had caught his terrible taste in jazz-funk fusion. She debated closing her window and retreating to her half-written blog post about vegan gyoza, but the smell grew thicker, meaner, like burned ambition. Her culinary instincts flared. Against better judgment, Victory leaned out the window slightly and called out, "Hey, you might want to check your garlic. It smells like it's trying to die a second time." A pause. Then a crash. A muffled curse. And 2 minutes later, someone knocked on her door. Victory frowned. She hadn't been expecting visitors, let alone ones who could barely cook. She wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and opened the door cautiously. There he was, taller up close, tousled dark hair. A trace of ash smudged across one cheek, like a war wound earned in battle against his own stove. He held something out. It looked like a lasagna, or at least what was left of one. "I owe you a thank you, and maybe an apology for the garlic assault," he said, flashing a crooked smile that almost distracted her from the bubbling black mess in the pan. "Name's Michael. I'm your neighbor, and apparently a menace to Italian cuisine." Victory blinked, took in the charred offering, and smirked despite herself. "I'd say it's salvageable, but that would be a lie." Michael sighed theatrically. "Thought so. I followed a recipe. Well, kind of. I got bored halfway through and improvised." She arched an eyebrow. "You improvised with lasagna? I'm more of a design first, figure it out later kind of guy. Architect instincts. Doesn't always translate to cooking." Victory stepped aside, gesturing him in before she could overthink it. "Come in. I'll show you how to rescue a lasagna, or at least your ego." And just like that, Michael Rivera walked into her kitchen with smoke still clinging to his sweater, smelling faintly of basil and disaster. Victory didn't know it yet, but something had just begun to simmer, and it wasn't just in the oven. Victory hadn't meant to start giving lessons. She was a food blogger, not a culinary therapist. Her kitchen was her haven, her sacred, spice-scented temple of precision and control. She liked order, knives sharpened, herbs labeled, and dough that obeyed her hands. And yet, here she was 3 days after the lasagna incident, watching Michael Rivera try to separate egg yolks from whites like he was defusing a bomb. "You're holding it like it's going to explode," she said, arms crossed, lips twitching with amusement. "It might," he muttered, frowning at the egg like it had personally offended him. "How do people do this without cracking the shell into a million pieces?" Victory took the egg from him and demonstrated in one smooth motion, the yolk slipping between the two halves like a golden pearl. "It's all in the fingertips. Gentle. Think of it like architecture, foundation first." Michael snorted. "If buildings were this fragile, I'd be out of a job." It had started with a knock at her door that morning, a paper coffee cup in his hand, and an almost shy smile on his face. He asked if she could show him how to make one decent dish. "Something not embarrassing," he'd said. "There's a girl I might want to cook for." Victory agreed. More out of curiosity than kindness, she told herself. Still, she'd felt that subtle sting when he'd mentioned a girl. Of course he had someone. Men like Michael, easy smiles, messy curls, the kind of shoulders you notice even when you're not trying, always had someone. She pushed that thought aside and focused on the stove. They were making pasta carbonara. It was simple but deceptively so. Timing mattered, temperature mattered, and most of all, patience mattered. Michael, as it turned out, wasn't a patient man. "I think it's done," he said, already reaching for the tongs as the spaghetti boiled. "It's still stiff." "It's not ready," Victory warned. "It's al dente. It's uncooked." He grinned. Tomato. "No, not even close." She took over with practiced grace, her hands moving from pot to pan to bowl, whisking egg yolks and parmesan with cracked pepper, her rhythm automatic. Michael watched her, really watched her, like the way her eyes narrowed when she tested sauce, or how she tilted her head when tasting, listening somehow with her tongue. "I get it now," he said quietly. "Get what?" "Why people fall in love with chefs." Victory's hands froze over the pot. She turned to him slowly, unsure if she'd misheard, but his gaze was on the pasta, his expression unreadable. "You mean the girl you're cooking for?" she asked, steadying her voice. He blinked. "What girl?" "The one you mentioned when you showed up." Michael looked confused for a beat. Then he smiled, slow and disarming. "Oh, right. That was mostly an excuse." Victory's cheeks flushed with warmth, and for once she didn't have a clever reply. They ate on her tiny balcony, knees almost touching, sharing bites and laughter and a bottle of cheap but surprisingly good Pinot Noir. The sun dipped behind the city skyline, casting everything in gold. The pasta wasn't perfect, but somehow it didn't need to be. By their fourth cooking session, Victory had stopped pretending this was just a favor. Michael showed up with 2 bunches of fresh parsley, one bruised, one pristine, and sheepishly handed her the better one. "I figured you'd judge me if I brought the sad-looking one." He was right, but she smiled anyway. They were making shakshuka that night, a Middle Eastern dish Michael had never heard of but instantly approved of when she described it as eggs poached in spicy tomato sauce with crusty bread on the side. "Sounds like a breakfast date kind of thing," he said, wiggling his eyebrows. Victory rolled her eyes. "It's dinner, and it's not a date." "Right. Not a date. Just 2 people cooking together by candlelight with music playing and wine breathing." "There are no candles." Michael glanced at the kitchen counter. "Give me a second." He disappeared and returned with 2 small tea light holders. He'd snagged them from his own coffee table. He lit them with the flourish of a magician. Victory gave him a look, but said nothing. Fine, she thought. Let it feel like a date, just for tonight. They worked in rhythm now, like dance partners who had learned each other's steps. She chopped onions while he stirred sauce. She corrected his knife grip. He corrected her posture. Playfully, always just a little too close. He wasn't a great cook yet, but he listened. More than that, he noticed. When her hair slipped into her face, he tucked it behind her ear without thinking. Her breath hitched. Neither of them commented on it. Over dinner, the conversation drifted. Michael told her about his dad, a contractor who built houses with more heart than blueprints, and his mother, who used to burn toast but somehow made the best tamales in the neighborhood. He talked about designing spaces that felt like stories. Victory, in turn, shared pieces of her childhood in Taiwan and Seattle, how food became her way of holding on to memory, especially after losing her grandmother, who taught her to fold dumplings with her eyes closed. She used to say, "You cook with your heart, not your hands," Victory murmured, absently running a finger around the rim of her wine glass. Michael leaned forward. "Then your heart must be a 5-star chef." The compliment wasn't smooth, but it was sincere. And it landed somewhere deep and unguarded. A breeze swept in from the balcony door, carrying the mingled scents of simmered tomatoes and warm bread. Victory realized they hadn't touched their food in minutes. They ate, finally. The yolks were perfect, soft, golden, gently pooling into the sauce. Michael dipped a piece of bread and offered it to her without thinking. She took it, their fingers brushing for just a second longer than necessary. When the meal ended, there was no awkward goodbye. No rush to separate the evening into categories of friendly or romantic. Michael helped her wash dishes, sleeves rolled up, forearms wet and glistening under the sink light. "I think this is the best thing I've ever made," he said as he dried a plate. Victory didn't answer right away. She just looked at him and smiled, small, quiet, but real. "Me too." Victory tried to ignore how often her thoughts drifted to Michael Rivera. She told herself it was just the cooking, Just the spark of excitement in teaching someone who actually wanted to learn, the way his eyes lit up when he got something right, the way he tried to make her laugh even when he completely overcooked rice. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just that. Her readers had started to notice too. She'd recently posted a recipe for handmade tagliatelle with lemon cream sauce. Simple, elegant, the kind of dish that didn't scream romance but whispered it in velvet tones. At the bottom of the post, she'd included a story. I taught someone this last week. He's learning to cook for someone. I'm not sure she deserves it. The comments poured in. Victory, who is he? Plot twist. You're the one he's trying to impress. We're rooting for you, mysterious pasta man. Her best friend Priya, a wine sommelier with a penchant for dramatic texts, sent her a message that afternoon. Priya. Okay. Who is this man? Also. You're clearly into him. Also. He is clearly into you. Don't make me fly to Portland. Victory stared at the message, chewing the end of a dried lemongrass stalk like it was a cigarette. She hated that Priya was right. She hated that the feeling growing in her chest wasn't a passing curiosity. It was something warm, patient, and persistent. It had started to simmer. Every time Michael showed up, he brought something a little more thoughtful. A jar of honey from the farmer's market, a new wooden spoon because he liked the way it looked and thought she might too, or even a small potted basil plant with a tag that read Victory's Victory Garden. He smiled when he gave it to her like it wasn't a big deal, like he wasn't slowly cooking his way into her life. Still, she hesitated. She remembered her last relationship, a man who loved her food but never quite saw her, who smiled for the pictures on her blog but flinched when she talked about turning it into a business. Michael, though charming, felt dangerously different, like he might see too much, like he might ask her to see him back. That evening, she prepared mushroom risotto for herself, something earthy and slow, stirring it methodically as the sky outside darkened. She glanced at the window across the courtyard, saw his silhouette move past the glass. A pang tugged at her. Then, as if summoned, her phone lit up with a text. Michael, what are you making? Smells amazing. Want company? Victory stared at the screen, thumb hovering. There were a dozen reasons to say no, but only one reason to say yes. She typed back, Victory, doors open. And in that moment, she didn't care what it was, or where it was going. She just knew something was simmering, and for once, she wanted to let it cook. The invitation came casually. Michael, leaning against Victory's counter while chopping shallots, said, So, I'm throwing a little dinner party this Friday. Just a few friends, co-workers, nothing huge. Wanna come? Victory paused, her spoon mid-stir. You're cooking? He grinned. You've trained me well. She tried to play it cool, nodding as if it didn't matter. But inside, her chest swelled with a quiet, ridiculous pride. The idea of Michael hosting a dinner party, using the techniques she taught him, maybe even serving her recipes, felt intimate in a way she hadn't expected. When Friday arrived, Victory spent too long picking out what to wear. She told herself it wasn't a date, it wasn't even her party. Still, she chose a soft sage green dress with sleeves that fell off the shoulder, simple gold hoops, and just a touch of mascara. A look that said effortlessly casual, even if it took 45 minutes to achieve. Michael's apartment smelled incredible when she arrived. Roasted chicken with lemon and rosemary, blistered cherry tomatoes, garlic bread toasted just right. The table was set with mismatched plates and too many candles, and a playlist she instantly recognized from one of their cooking nights. You made all this? She asked, impressed. Every bite, he said, his dimple flashing. Even the vinaigrette. Be proud of me. I already am, she said before she could stop herself. People began to arrive, 2 guys from his architecture firm, a couple who looked like they lived in an art gallery, and then her. Tall, effortlessly stylish. Chestnut hair falling over one shoulder like something from a shampoo commercial. She kissed Michael on the cheek, too close, too familiar. Victory's stomach twisted. This is Nina, Michael said, catching her glance. Old friend from college. Just moved back to Portland. Nina smiled, extending a hand. You must be Victory. Michael's told me so much. You're the reason he hasn't burned pasta in weeks. Victory shook her hand, tight-lipped. He exaggerates. Dinner was warm and buzzing, too warm. The room hummed with wine and laughter, but Victory felt like a guest at her own story. Michael moved between guests like he belonged to all of them, but Nina stuck close. Leaning in, laughing a little too loudly, touching his arm as though she had a right to. Victory hated how easily she noticed. And then it happened. Nina, glass in hand, teased. "Remember that time in Barcelona when you tried to cook for me and nearly set off the fire alarm?" Michael laughed. "Hey, I've come a long way since then." She leaned closer. "I don't know, I kind of miss that guy." And something in Victory cracked, not loudly, not publicly. Quietly, like a dropped teacup on thick carpet. She excused herself, said something vague about needing to feed her sourdough starter, and left before dessert. Michael didn't follow. Not that night. Back in her apartment, Victory leaned against the sink, staring at her reflection in the window. She felt stupid, for hoping, for assuming, for believing she might be the one he wanted to impress. Maybe Nina had been the girl all along. And all that simmering? She turned off the heat. The next morning, Victory was up early, kneading dough like it owed her an apology. Flour dusted her cheeks. The windows fogged from oven heat. Her kitchen, a space usually calm and meditative, had become a battlefield. She pressed her palms into the dough with a rhythm that bordered on punishment. Every stretch, every fold, was an attempt to quiet the storm Michael had left behind. She didn't want to be angry. She had no right to be really. He never promised anything. He never said the cooking lessons were anything more than cooking lessons. Never said the candles meant something. Never said the bread he brought her every week was about her, and not just a polite thank you. But still, it hurt. A knock came at the door. Victory froze. She considered ignoring it, but the second knock was more persistent. Then his voice. "Victory? Can we talk?" She wiped her hands clean and opened the door. Michael stood there, dark circles under his eyes, holding a Tupperware container. "I brought you leftovers," he said weakly. She stared at it. "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." He shifted awkwardly. "You left last night. You seemed well entertained." His brow furrowed. "Wait, what?" Victory folded her arms. "Nina, you two looked close." Michael blinked, then laughed once, sharp, incredulous. "You left because of Nina?" She flushed. "I left because I realized I was just the warm-up act. The one who teaches the guy how to cook, so he can impress the real girl." Michael's face changed. His mouth opened slightly, like she'd thrown something, and he hadn't seen it coming. "You think that's what this is?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. "Victory," he said, stepping inside, setting the Tupperware on the counter without asking. "I've been trying to impress you since the day you yelled at me about garlic through the wall." She turned away, busying herself with a dishcloth. "Don't. I canceled dates because I didn't want them. I brought you basil because I noticed you were out. I've been showing up every week hoping you'd see that this, us, is the best thing I've learned how to cook." She didn't look at him, not yet. "Then why invite her?" "Because she's a friend. That's it. We're done. We've been done." She needed a familiar face in a new city. Victory let the silence stretch. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the cloth once, twice. "I felt like a guest at my own recipe," she whispered. Michael stepped closer, voice soft. "Then let's rewrite it." Finally, she looked at him. And something in her, tight and guarded, broke open just a little. But she didn't answer. Not yet. She turned off the oven instead, letting the dough rest. "I need some time," she said. He nodded. "I'll wait." And when he left, the kitchen was quiet again. But the air still held the faintest scent of rosemary and something waiting to rise. The days passed slowly. Victory avoided looking at her phone more than necessary. She baked through every emotion. Sourdough loaves that rose too high, matcha shortbread that crumbled too easily, and a batch of sesame seed buns that came out angry and overbaked, just like her mood. She kept her blog updates cheerful, bright. New recipes, step-by-step videos, taste test reels. None of them showed the tightness behind her smile. None of them showed her reaching for the basil plant on her windowsill, now slightly wilted but still alive. She wanted to believe Michael. Really, she did. But believing someone cared about you, that you weren't just a temporary warm place to land, that was harder than any recipe. 3 days later, it rained hard. Summer thunder, unexpected and moody. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, spooning miso into broth, when the knock came again. This time she didn't freeze. She opened the door slowly, half expecting silence. But there he was. Michael. Soaked through, hoodie clinging to him, curls plastered to his forehead. He looked nervous, a little out of breath. And he was holding something, a warm ceramic bowl, steaming despite the rain. "I made curry," he said, voice just loud enough over the storm. Victory blinked. "What kind?" "Thai green. Your favorite." I remembered. He stepped forward carefully, as though afraid she might close the door again. In his other hand was a small, slightly crumpled recipe card. He held it out. She took it. For the one I want to feed forever was written across the top in his blocky, earnest handwriting. The card was detailed. Handwritten notes. A tiny doodle of a basil leaf in the corner. Underlined steps with little stars next to the ingredients she always insisted on using. It wasn't perfect, but it was him. Thoughtful. Real. Trying. "Victory," he said. "I know I messed up, not with Nina, but with you. I should have said something sooner. I just didn't think I deserved you." Her throat tightened. He exhaled. "But I want to. I want to be the guy who brings you breakfast after late nights. The guy who folds dumplings with you even if I suck at it. The guy who learns every damn spice in your cupboard because it matters to you." The rain softened outside. Victory stepped back, wordlessly, and he followed her in. They sat at her table, the same table where they'd once eaten carbonara by candlelight. She dipped a spoon into the curry. Rich. Tangy. Balanced heat. Her eyes closed, just for a second. "You didn't burn the garlic," she murmured. He smiled, hopeful. "I've come a long way." She looked up at him, finally, and her smile, though small, was the realest one she'd worn in days. "So have we." 2 weeks later, a new post appeared on Victory's blog. The title read, "How Teaching Someone to Cook Taught Me to Love Again." The photo at the top was unassuming, a bowl of Thai green curry, garnished with a sprig of basil. But the real story unfolded beneath, in a voice softer than her usual tone, a voice that read more like a letter than a recipe. He knocked on my door with a burned lasagna. I almost didn't let him in. I almost let my pride, my fear, and my past tell me to stay behind the safety of my apron and cast iron pans. But then he started showing up. Not just for the food, but for the learning. For the mistakes. For me. And somewhere between the chopped shallots and the overstirred risotto, I realized I wasn't just teaching someone to cook. I was falling in love. Victory clicked publish, and sat back in her chair, heart drumming, hands warm. The kitchen around her was full, of sunlight, of scents, of presence. Michael came in from the balcony a moment later, holding 2 mugs of ginger tea. He wore her spare apron now, the navy blue one with the embroidery, "Feed with Heart." It had once belonged to her grandmother. He didn't ask what she posted. He didn't have to. "Readers are going to go nuts," he teased gently, setting the tea beside her. "They already are," she replied, watching comments roll in on the screen. He bent down and kissed the top of her head. "You want to cook something?" She looked at him, at the soft curve of his smile, the way he belonged here like he always had. "No," she said. "I want us to cook something." Later that night, the camera on her tripod blinked red as it filmed them side by side, rolling out dumpling wrappers. They bumped elbows, laughed when flour smeared across her cheek, and spoke directly to the lens. "Today," Victory said, "we're making dumplings with a little help." Michael grinned. "And a lot of heart." In the background, on the wall beside the spice rack, 2 aprons hung side by side. His and hers. Stained. Wrinkled. Used. Loved.